it looks like we've come a full circle, because this is where I was the first journalist to try the Ultraviolette F77 prototype. That one looked nothing like it. It was very much in the development stage. They had just called me in to ride and to give them inputs. And 2 years down the line, I was at MMRT riding what we then considered to be almost a production-ready prototype. And what truly blew me away was this young team, how they had pretty much not only listened but implemented a lot of the things, a lot of the inputs which I had given them. And now here we stand today with the production-ready Ultraviolette F77 at the same exact facility. A lot has obviously changed over the years, but the one thing which has remained constant is how beautiful this machine is. I think this is undoubtedly, at least in my books, the most beautiful motorcycle to come out of India. I mean, just look at it. Looks exquisite. Looks so futuristic. It's like half the battle won, yeah? Because when a motorcycle looks this good, you already want it. But that's just the surface. On the inside, there's so much more to talk about. The bike which I rode at MMRT had swappable batteries. This one today doesn't have swappable batteries. This has 10 kilowatt hour battery, the biggest one that you'll find on an electric two-wheeler in India. So yeah, this shares the same battery as the top-end model, but this is actually the F77 Recon. This has slightly lower power output. This makes about 39 horsepower, 95 Newton meters of torque. You have a claimed top speed of 145 kilometers an hour, a claimed range of 307 kilometers on a single charge, which is insane, which we'll of course not be able to test on this first ride, but when we get it for a long review. You have 3 riding modes. You get 3 different modes of regen. And then, as you have come to expect from all electric vehicles, you get navigation, intimation for incoming calls and messages. You have a 320 mm disc at the front. You have sintered pad. You have steel braided lines. And at the back, you have a 230 mm disc with a floating caliper with a single piston. The only downside to this setup is the fact that the bigger battery also means the weight has gone up a lot. So the previous prototype which I tested at MMRT weighed about 160 kgs. This one weighs into about 204 kgs. So that's a big change. So how has that affected the riding dynamics is what I'm really curious to see. And we have a long, amazing day in front of us. First, we're gonna spin a few laps here on the go-kart track, which will give us a really good idea about how this one handles, especially the weight and the weight distribution, because it's a really tight and technical track. And thereafter, we're also going to the famed Nandi Hills. Yes, I finally get to go there in Bengaluru to see how this performs on the road. Wow, what a day. This is where we started. We're back here at the track, and it gave us a lot of insight into how this F77 has evolved. I mean, the first thing which really stood out was, of course, the battery. Needless to say that the fastest mode, the ballistic mode, was my favorite because I love the throttle response. Man, this thing goes. Even though it has that much weight, you don't feel it. It really goes. I just wish that, the torque curve was a little bit different in the sense it really accelerates hard up to about 80 kilometers an hour, and thereafter you feel like the power tapering off a little bit. I mean, it still goes strong. It'll go up to 140 for sure, as we found out near Nandi Hills. I thought for a fact that Ultraviolette had dug themselves into a grave, yeah, by holding the first ride here on such a technical track, especially for a motorcycle which weighs so much. But if anything, this has been like the litmus test, and I'm coming back very impressed looking at how good a job they've done with the weight distribution, because you do not feel the weight despite running such a tight geometry, yeah, such a tight rake, because the wheelbase on this is still a very aggressive 1340 mm. To put things into perspective, the Duke 390 has a 1370 mm wheelbase. So despite all of that weight, they've done a really good job in terms of keeping it lower down so you don't really feel it. In terms of the chassis rigidity, it inspires a lot of confidence. Another thing which impressed me was, of course, the suspension, the ride quality. At Nandi Hills, that's the first thing I noticed, that on a public road, you know, this is so plush. It just absorbs everything. It is a softer setup, but it actually works quite well. And with a little bit of tweaking, I think this can be a monster of a track machine. I think they've done a pretty good job in terms of the kind of equipment they have used. You have really good feel thanks to the steel braided lines. I like how, you know, even the lever is progressive, and at the end you have really good stopping power. But I did feel that because of the softer setup, there's a lot of weight transfer going on to the front. And at the fag end of the 30 minutes riding time that we had, I felt the lever coming in more and more. And that's where I felt that the regen can definitely be boosted. So even though we were running here in the highest possible regen available, in a lot of corners when you're entering, it felt like you're riding a two-stroke bike. So I think if they would bump up the regen even more, especially when you're riding in the ballistic mode, I think that will help smoothen the weight transfer, but also take a little bit or give the brakes a little more assistance. Because honestly, for a motorcycle of this size, of this weight, you ideally need a twin brake setup. That's how it performed here on the go-kart track, right? Then we went to Nandi Hills, and that highlighted a lot of other positives, starting with the ergonomics. They're actually quite comfortable. For commuting, yeah, maybe you would want slightly taller clip-ons, but these actually work quite well. I like how much room there is to move around, especially when you're going from one corner into the other. There's a lot of room even for a tall guy like me, which is a big positive. The seat is a little bit on the harder side, as you would expect on a sportier bike. So yeah, they could have done maybe with a little more cushion here to make longer rides a little more comfortable, because it clearly has the range as they're claiming. Also on the heat front, I did not really feel it. I mean, yeah, this was a very pleasant day here in Bengaluru, but I did not really feel any heat coming onto my legs or any dip in performance. Something which I had observed in the previous test at MMRT, but this is a completely different battery, so that did not seem to be the case at all. There are also small things which they have done really well in terms of you have adjustable brake lever, which is great. And also I like how this fin is not just a design element, it actually works as a crash protector, because it has proper backing, metal backing at the back, which in case of a fall will not only protect your leg but also the fairing. Yeah, I definitely think they can do a better job with the dash, because that's a lot of space, but the actual dash is quite small and all the font on it is very tiny. So you really have to look to really read what's going on. And this space, I feel, can be much better used. Yeah, because we live in an age where, you know, all of these are now almost like phones. They are touchscreen. This is not touchscreen enabled. And you have so much more information, customization options available even on your EV scooters. So that's something where I feel that this can definitely be much better. On the highway, going for high-speed runs, there's barely any wind protection whatsoever, so there's going to be a decent amount of wind blasts. So sustaining those high speeds will not be as much fun. I also feel like there are small things like the brake lever was a little too low. It can be a little bit higher, so braking is that much easier. It brings us to the million-dollar question. If the F77 Recon is worth its 4.5 lakh rupee price tag, I think the only thing missing in this artillery is cornering ABS. And I was quite surprised that it doesn't have it, considering that it already has a 9-axis IMU. So I spoke to Ultraviolette about it and they said that it's definitely in the works. But then all of these processes, the licensing for cornering ABS with Bosch takes a lot of time. Just to get the dual channel ABS on this motorcycle, it took them almost a year and a half. So that's something they're already working on. And the best part about it is the fact that this already has the hardware. So they very well could get the license, get the testing done, and then over the air, update it on every single F77 whenever it becomes available. So that's like a big positive, and that's the case for a lot of things, a lot of the problems which I mentioned before in terms of the regen, in terms of the torque curve. These things could easily be fixed, using an update. This is a very expensive motorcycle, going by your normal ICE motors. You have the Duke 390, which is so much cheaper. But I don't think that's the right approach. The right way to look at it is, let's take an EV example. So you have the Ola, which retails at about 1.3 lakhs, which comes with a 4 kilowatt hour battery, right? This one has a 10 kilowatt hour battery. That is the price of this technology. And then when you look at it from that perspective, it's fair. The price is very much fair. And I mean, look at this product. It has the componentry to justify that price tag. Yes, the big question mark is, of course, the range. Now that is something which I am really looking forward to test when we get this for a comprehensive review back home. But as far as first impressions go, I was very skeptical when I first looked at the price at the launch, but having ridden it, having seen its evolution and seen how far it has come, and also seeing the potential that it packs for the future in terms of how easily all the improvements could be implemented on this machine over the air. I mean, that's what we are looking at, an electric future, and it makes me very proud as an Indian to see such a product be born, designed here in India for the world.